I think we're good to go. Hello, friends. Welcome to Trampoline, Ithaca's premier competitive monthly storytelling event. You are here tonight as part of the Spring Rights Literary Festival. Tonight we bring you a curated night of storytelling. We have 5 great storytellers who are going to bring you stories about climate change and social justice. We have great judges. We have all of you. I also want to just give like a quick shout out to Spring Rights. So this is the second weekend of the 2021 Spring Rights Literary Festival. There are many more events coming up this weekend, and also writing workshops that will be continuing through November. And Spring Rights is a program of the Community Arts Partnership of Tompkins County, also known as CAP. And all Spring Rights events from May 5th through the 16th are being taped. Oh, like this one. We're recording. Yeah, okay. Peter, you're so on it. This is why I need you.
You are recording. You're good.
Yes. And all the videos will be up at springrights.org in a week or so. And as of right now, you can go to springrights.org and find out what other events are going on. And it's not just because Robin's paying me, but I will be at all events for the rest of the weekend. So come join me. There's some great stuff. And although the festival is free, they always ask for donations at the events. And if you feel so moved to donate any amount to the awesome Spring Rights Literary Festival, I'll put the link in the chat along with the CAP website link. And yeah. And so you can learn more, or you can throw a few bucks in CAP's direction to help support this. They get a lot of grants that help pay for these events, and that's great. So yay, CAP. So welcome to Trampoline. So while normally it's an open event where we invite all people to show up, sign up, and share a story based on the monthly theme, tonight is a special night. Tonight is curated. Tonight we have an evening of storytellers who are sharing stories based on the theme change. And these are personal tales inspired by climate change and social justice. And not only are they competing for a $50 Buffalo Street Bookstore gift certificate, they are competing for the title of the 2021 Spring Rights Literary Festival Trampoline Storytelling Champion of Change. And it says it right here on this trophy. It's engraved. It's really small because it's there'll be words on here later. So I am the mighty Mickie Quinn. I am the producer and I am the host of Trampoline. Yay. Hi, everyone. And with me tonight, as always, is my right-hand man, the always positive, often hilarious, and with his impeccably cool taste in music, Peter B., who's also the host of...
Hello.
Hey, he's also the host of WRFI's Burning Airlines on Sundays at 3 p.m. for a delightful dose of art, rock, post-punk, and prog. So tune in on Sundays. Hear Peter. I guarantee it is the best curated 2 hours of music you will hear in your week. Hands down. And it wouldn't be a competition without our celebrity guest judges. I am thrilled to introduce, and Peter, if you want to add spotlight to as I introduce them, so that way everyone can see who gets to be super judgy tonight.
I will do what I can.
Okay. First up, Danielle L. Eisman is a visiting lecturer at Cornell and co-author of the newly published book, Our Changing Menu, Climate Change and the Foods We Love and Need. You can visit the companion website, ourchangingmenu.com, that continues the story and also provides a food database of what is happening to food across the globe. She is also an eco-friendly behavior nerd, a podcaster who's still finding her groove on down-to-earth Cornell conversations about, and is now an aspiring car camper. Yay. And if we're lucky tonight, we might get a glimpse of her crazy dog, Sadie. So thank you, Danielle, for being here tonight. Yay.
Thank you.
Up next, we have Jonathan Miller, who is a radio and print journalist who has worked in more than 20 countries. He's also board chair of Ithaca City of Asylum and one of the organizers of Story House Ithaca. But his true claim to fame is that he played a dance contest judge in a straight-to-DVD feature film from Nigeria called Let's Dance Again. He had no spoken lines and has no proof that the film was ever finished. So welcome, Jonathan. And last, but only sometimes least, we welcome the author of 100,000 Worlds, The Nobody People, and The Somebody People. He has made your coffee, sold you records, and convinced you to be part owner of Buffalo Street Books. He's Ithaca's notorious maestro of trivia, the father of Ithaca's coolest tiara-wearing 6-year-old, and the original host of Trampoline. Give a big warm welcome to Bob Prohl. Freshly shaven and everything. Looking good, Bob. So tonight, our judges will be scoring each story based on content and presentation. Content, does the story have a beginning, middle, and end? Does it relate to tonight's theme? Presentation, was the story well articulated? Did they move you with your words? Were you able to walk in the storyteller's shoes? Were their words able to give you a glimpse of the world through their point of view? And hopefully they give you a little taste of something that has changed in their life, and hopefully also the world. All right, so how so our storytellers tonight, and you don't have to highlight them, I'm just going to say their names. Anise Hotchkiss, Anna Canny, Audrey Baker, Brian Sincerbo, and Marissa Slocum. So each of their names have been placed in this bag. An audience to you, when I make this motion, you can all make thunderous noise. As I put my hand in the bag, pull out the name of the next storyteller, and then the night will commence. The storytellers will have up to 8 minutes to tell their story. A buzzer will go off at 8 minutes. I see. I have a new phone and it's hard. Let's see if I can do it. Yeah, I might have to go get my other phone because I can't figure out how this works.
Well, if you just hold it up to the mic, we can hear it.
Oh yeah, you can hear that. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And I'll make wavy hand motions too. But hopefully you'll wrap up your story in 8 minutes. A second timer will go off 2 minutes after that 8-1, and at that point you will be muted. Then like your story's just done and over. So if this is a competition, the stakes are high, and you know, and we got to make it fun. And then what else? An audience, you are welcome to stay unmuted. That way we can hear your laughter, your sighs, and other appropriate audible reactions. If you have excessive background noise at your location, we ask that you use your judgment and keep yourself muted. Of course, when the stories are over, take yourself off mute, applause, or, you know, make excited hand gestures. We're all here. This is a safe place. This is, we are supporting and celebrating these storytellers who've taken the time to share something personal from their life for all of you. And they deserve thunderous applause, as do I and Peter. So, okay. I think those are all the rules. We got it. So everyone also knows the judges will be sending their scores directly to me. In both content and presentation, they are scoring from 1 to 10. So the judges will be sending me 2 scores, like a 7 and an 8. And they're sending it directly to me via the Zoom chat. And then I will say all of the scores out loud. So that way, you know, if you're mathing along at home, you will know what to do. All right, I think that's everything. Are we ready to get going? Okay, let's make some noise for our very first storyteller. Anise! Welcome. Hold on one second. I got sent. Do, 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 do. I have words. All right. Anise is a local story lover and teller, grower of vegetables, parenter of child, keeper of bees, dogs, and cats, picker of mushrooms, walker of woods, friend of people, and advocate of compassion. Welcome, Anise.
Hi, everybody. This is going to be weird not being able to hear you, but being able to hear my dog bark in the background. All right. So if any of you have been to Trampoline in the past, you'll probably have heard me tell stories about my upbringing in the church. And so this is another one. So I wasn't one of those people that like went Christmas and Easter every once in a while. Like this was my whole life. It was everything about how I understood the world. And in the type of Christianity that I was involved in, there was a pretty strong obsession with the second coming of Christ. Now, if you're not familiar with that, you might also have heard, the apocalypse, Jesus returning, but essentially this prophecy that one day Jesus would come back and God would destroy the world and only the saved would ascend to heaven. We were taught that this was something that we were supposed to want, that this was something that we should be anticipating with, great joy and excitement. There's a passage in the Bible that is frequently misinterpreted related to this, where it's about being a servant waiting into the night for the master to return. But like a lot of other aspects of being brought up a Christian, I felt really guilty about the fact that I didn't really want this to happen. I really liked life. I liked the world. I loved the world. I didn't really want it to be destroyed. I wanted my life to continue. And I felt really guilty about this because I was supposed to want the entire universe to go up in flames. But somehow it just wasn't my bag. And I remember talking with a friend of mine, with a minister, about the fact that we felt really guilty about the fact we didn't want Jesus to come back before we hadn't lost our virginity. Like we wanted to definitely not be virgins when he came back. And, he took this very seriously. He told us that, it wouldn't matter because when we get to heaven, it will be way better than any sexual experience that you could have. It was our real home. It was perfection itself. It was paradise. But I wasn't really convinced. I just, wanted an orgasm. But unfortunately, once I went into puberty and into my teenage years, when a lot of kids kind of started wrestling with mortality, I started developing pretty intense anxiety about the second coming of Jesus. It was particularly eternity, this idea of this never-ending time in a place that was nothing like anything that I knew. Where supposedly my sole task was to praise my Lord and Savior, who I wasn't sure liked me very much anyways. And this was supposed to be satisfying for all time. And frankly, it terrified me. I don't know why. I began to become so anxious. Whenever I heard a sermon at church on Sunday or church on Sunday night or Bible study on Wednesday or youth group on Friday or youth rallies 3 times a year or church camp in the summer or Christian college, whenever I heard a sermon about this, which was often, I would have to go to the bathroom and hide there until it was over because I just couldn't handle hearing about it. It was too scary. Even once I was outside putting clothes on a clothesline, and I lived in the country, so it was very quiet, and I heard a very loud, distant sound repeated, and I was convinced it was the trumpets, and that any moment Jesus was going to descend from the sky. And I had a total panic attack. in the middle of hanging clothes. So this was my mental state for a long time until I was about 21. And I was at Christian college and I was in an art class. And I just have to say right now, thank God for English, art, and philosophy teachers. They saved my fucking life. This art teacher presented a painting by this Christian artist. It was a beautiful landscape of, meadows and mountains and trees and animals and people. But if you looked more closely, you would see that there was something kind of off, like the trees were taller than the mountains and there were fish like swimming in the sky. And what this was meant to be is the artist expressing their belief that the idea that God was going to destroy the world just didn't make sense. They believed that God loved the world, that the world was imbued with divinity and holiness, and God would never destroy such a beautiful thing. And his idea was that if there was to be a second coming, the earth would be made into something that we could never even imagine. And this was a complete life-changing moment for me. It was the first time that I had this idea given to me that maybe the earth wasn't this terrible, awful place that we were to just kind of forget and get on up to heaven. And it was the first time that I felt permission to love the earth, to actually feel like, no, this is right. God loves the earth. And it was really the defining moment where I started becoming an environmentalist, where I started caring about what happened to the earth. And there's, in this form of Christianity that I was brought up in, and it really imbues our culture and the the economic theories that is in symbiosis with this idea that we should just do what we like with it because it's not really our home. There's like hymns I remember from childhood where like, this world is not my home, I'm just a passing through, like that, this idea that this is not where we're supposed to be. And not only that we have the right to basically do whatever we want to it, because there's a misinterpretation of in Genesis where it says that God gave us the earth to have dominion over. And there have been theologists who have looked at the original Hebrew and said this was not a correct translation, that what it should be more like is God gave us the earth to serve and observe. And this became kind of how I began to understand my relationship to the earth, that I was to be in service to it. But not only that there is a divine calling to witness its beauty and to learn from it, that there's so much of how the nature works that if only we could mimic some of that, how much more symbiotic we would be with the earth. So I became committed to that, and my fear of death really diminished quite a lot. I stopped being so afraid of death, because it wasn't like, now when I think about death, I don't feel like I'm leaving home the way that I thought of before. It just feels like death is just moving into another room in the same home that we've always known. Thank you.
Thank you. And like 8 minutes on the dot. Yes. Thank you, Denise. That was beautiful. And I love that point of view of how you became an environmentalist. It's unique, and I think a story that I think a lot of people need to hear, that there are a lot of people out there with those point of views that have, shaped why our earth is getting damaged, because, they're just passing through. Toss that litter out the window. All right, so judges, send in your scores. Just had a revelation of maybe how to turn up my volume on these things. If anyone I went from an iPhone 6 to a 12 this week, and it's it's different. All right. So far we've got an 8 and an 8. A 9 and an 8. And an 8 and a 9. Well done, Anise. Yay. All right. Oh, I found it. Victory. All right, let's make some noise for our next storyteller. That will be Brian. All right. Brian Cincerbo is a native of Ithaca. Among his passions are travel, dance, baseball, and nature. Take it away, Brian.
All right. Well, good evening, everybody. I feel very almost small in starting out my story with a quote from Mark Twain, but nonetheless, I'll give it my best shot. Travel is fatal to prejudice, bigotry, and small-mindedness. And in my time on Earth, I've had the good fortune of doing some travel. Being a native of Ithaca, I left for the Rocky Mountains out west when I was 28. And as soon as I got west of the Mississippi River, I pretty much didn't look back. I come back every now and again to check on my folks and sit down next to my dad and watch the Yankees. Well, mostly complain about the Yankees, of course, but here I am again. About 6 years ago, I had the very good fortune of traveling to Peru, where I spent 3 months. And in my time, I just saw majestic beauty of the Andes, a very young mountain range, which is only getting bigger, formed by volcanic eruptions and, of course, continental drift. I met so many great people and just had an absolutely transformative experience. As my time waned, as I needed to make it back to Lima to catch my flight to come back home to the States, I made my way to Arequipa, which is one of the cities on the western side of the country, on the western slope of the Andes Mountains, going toward the Pacific Mountains. And I made my way there with a couple of friends of mine, one who was a former Israeli Black Ops commando turned world-class flautist and shaman, the other a Quechuan elder. And they were going to Arequipa in search of medicinal cacti, and I was going for a ride. And we made our way through the Andes. Of course, there are roads, but there are no maps, and we got lost many times, and there are no traffic laws, and so we almost got run off mountain roads by tour buses with tourists and the locals going from here to there. But we finally made our way to Arequipa, which is a staggeringly beautiful city. It's called the White City, in fact. It's heralded and is known as of the cities in South America, one of the most closely resembling old Spain. And it is white beyond all compare, not just due to the color of the buildings, but just like the sheer beauty of the land. It sits at the foot of 3 dormant volcanoes where you can see condors flying daily throughout the day. And as we went around Arequipa, my friends found the cacti that they were looking for, met a lot of great people, had some wonderful experiences, and they found their fill, and they made their way back to the mountains, going back to Cusco, deep in the mountains, going toward Bolivia. I stayed for a few days, traveling around Arequipa, a city which I desperately wanted to see more of. On the 4th day that I was there, wandering around, meandering, I made my way to Calle Mercado, which is their version of the Champs-Élysées, where all of the higher-end shops are. And it was hustling, bustling, mostly Peruvians, the Europeans or Caucasians, the gringos that you saw, most likely all of us tourists, were maybe 5 to 10% of the people on the street. And as I was going through, looking at shops, which I knew I couldn't afford to shop at, and looking at restaurants, which I was very curious about being a foodie, I made my way through the crowd, and eventually I came across a voice piercing through the crowd. And it was curious in that it was English in a Spanish-speaking town. And as I listened closer, it sounded like that of
Oh, you're freezing, Brian.
jazz spoken word. And so I listened closer, and there in the hustle and bustle, it became clear that it was Martin Luther King Jr. And it was his I Have a Dream speech. And I was drawn to it, and I moved over closer to the gentleman sitting on top of the speaker, just slowly eating a bowl of rice. And I sat in and I listened to the speech reach its uproarious applause at the end. And I had a few coins and put them in the jar out in front of him that he had for collections. And I said, "Gracias, hermano," in my best Spanish. And without missing a beat, he said, "Where are you from, brother?" in perfect English. So my attempts at good Spanish were totally called out right on the spot. And so he and I, in English, had a wonderful conversation. I introduced myself as Brian from the United States, and he introduced himself as Richard Nestor, a gentleman from Georgetown, Guyana, in northern South America. And in meeting him and in speaking with him, it was clear that he was also blind. And it was a very interesting conversation that we had. And I asked him, like, how did you make your way from Georgetown, Guyana down to Peru? It's like, well, I take the bus like anybody else. And it's like, oh yeah, that's how I got here too, actually. So I'm leaving. And over the next few days, or a couple of days, we got to know one another. When he wasn't, after he played Martin Luther King, he would play on jazz records. He even let me choose one at one point. I went with John Coltrane. And the speech I couldn't let go of the speech though, because it was so unique to hear, first of all, Martin Luther King Jr., his voice in the middle of a Spanish-speaking town. And it was very unique also for a Black man, which Richard Nestor is, to be traveling alone through South America, which is no doubt not even safe for most people. But he makes his way just fine. And what really stood out, and actually what he illuminated, the reason why he played the speech was that not just for the plight of the Black man in America, which of course the speech was originally crafted for, but where he found power is that it's for the power for the plight of anybody who goes through slavery around the world. And I couldn't help but just be moved by that. And meeting a blind man as such as himself, who sees the world so clearly, was humbling, to say the least. I'm sorry. There's so much that I can say about him, but it was just an experience that as you can no doubt tell, it's like it's moving. I think back to the speech and how Dr. King said, hopefully he had a dream that in Alabama, Black children can hold hands with white children. And for a brief moment, myself, a white man, got to sit with a Black man and just talk about the comings and goings of ourselves, also the people around us. And bringing that back, I no doubt know that I had such a wonderful experience. And obviously it's with humility that I know that I can't. I can barely even describe what it was like or how I can even move forward. But I know that it's the small things that we all can do every day, and hopefully I do my best to do that. But that's my time, and thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you, Brian. Such a gift that we get to meet people around the world who, can teach us these things and open our eyes. All right, judges, we've got a 7 and a 7, 6 and a 6, and a 9 and a 9. All right, Brian. All right, let's keep this moving. Let's make noise for our next storyteller. Anna Canny. Anna is a senior, just about to graduate, at Cornell University, studying environment and sustainability. After graduating this May, she'll be juggling jobs at the Environmental Defense Fund and Living on Earth, a public radio show. Let me say that again. She'll be juggling jobs at the Environmental Defense Fund and Living on Earth, a public radio show covering environmental news. When she's not doing climate change work, you can find her roller skating, cooking, or hanging out with her cat, Ladybug. Welcome, Anna.
Thank you for having me. Yeah, I'm glad to be here. So I guess I'll just get right into it. Okay. So my path to working on climate change issues began with murder. Dun, dun, dun. Lack of sound effects. I'm used to working in radio. Anyway, I pitched that hook to my mom. She said it was very kitschy. I said, that's perfect. I'm trying to lean into that, get my nerves out of the way right off the bat. But let me explain myself. So my parents are big tent campers, and when I was a kid, summer break was pretty much synonymous with visits to national parks. That was their version of a luxury vacation. And when I was small, it did feel pretty fancy. We shared this 8-person tent among the 4 of us, and there was this big zip-up dividing wall that went down the middle, which me and my younger sister could turn into our own room. So that felt like luxury to us. Anyway, on this fatal day, we were camping in Acadia National Park up in Maine. And even now, it's one of my favorite places in the world. I think it's because I really love the ocean. Nothing brings me more joy than being near the waves. And I joke a lot that it's because I'm a Pisces. I don't know if anyone here is into astrology, but if you believe in that stuff, you could say it's written in the stars. I'm a water baby, etc. I've always loved the ocean. So naturally, on this trip, I spent hours exploring tide pools. And Acadia is full of these boulders that are made of this gray granite. They're speckled with this dried red-brown algae, and they have these little flakes of mineral that on bright sunny days like this particular day make them almost glittery. And they're massive to anyone, but at this point I was 7 years old and they felt gigantic, almost like mythical. And tucked among these boulders, under the overhangs and between the crevices, there are dozens of shimmering tide pools that were just rippling slightly in the salty breeze. I remember skinning my knees as I reached over the edge of the pool to plunge my twiggy little arm elbow deep into the water. My main goals were to antagonize those tiny crabs, or to poke the slimy sea anemones to make my younger sister giggle as they pulled their tentacles back into their squishy jelly-like bodies. But the sea stars were my favorite by far. I loved stroking their rough, like bumpy skin, and especially peeling them off the rock faces to watch all of their little suction cups wriggling. I thought their bright colors drew me in most of all. They come in oranges, purples, pinks, and I think it makes them kind of otherworldly. I thought of them at that time and still kind of today like little aliens. We had gone to a bunch of gift shops in Bar Harbor. I had seen them dried up in baskets, and I had equated that to me taking one home. And so I wanted to collect one more than anything in the world. But my mom is a strong believer in the leave no trace policy. For those of you who haven't heard of it, the basic motto is take only pictures, leave only footprints. No souvenirs, no souvenir starfish by any means. So she would not budge on this matter. But I was kind of an annoyingly persistent child, so of course I would not stop asking. And one day I was begging once again when this thick Maine accent interjected. And please forgive my accent. I've been annoying my housemates with it. It's disrupted my finals studying. I've gotten really hung up on it, and this is the best I could come up with. But anyway, it interjected this voice, and it said, "Oh, come on, they're the cockroaches of the sea." And to our right stood this weathered old fisherman. In my memory, he's got like a gray beard, the classic yellow rain suit, cable knit sweater, big rubber boots, the whole get up. In reality, he was probably dressed in normal people clothes, but I can't get that image out of my brain. So that's how he'll be. But anyway, he continued, he said, "Let her have one. They're practically vermin," to my mom. And so with his like wrinkly old man eyes turned on her and my bugged up blue eyes staring up at her, she couldn't help but cave. And so I selected this vibrant tangerine star, tucked it in my pocket, and we took it home. Back at our campsite, we tried boiling it to preserve it on this little Coleman stove, and I don't know why we thought that would work, but we ended up basically with a sickly green starfish goo in a Ziploc bag, and it smelled like low tide, but even worse, one of the most disgusting smells I've ever smelled. And just like that, I had sullied my junior ranger badge, which I had just earned, and I also had murdered this tiny little alien that I had snuck out of the park. So I still feel guilty about it sometimes, and I'm not even exaggerating. I've had like multiple stress dreams about it. I've only in recent years gotten over it, but it haunted me. What the fisherman said was true. One sea star at that time was hardly significant, but still destroying it felt awful. And from then on, I was pretty much a perfect saint of stewardship. But it was my second sea star fatality that convinced me to study climate change. So I had a summer job leading harbor tours up in Alaska. I was kind of bumming off of my cousin who was up there. She got me the job, wanted to do something fun. And just like when I was a kid, I loved to show off the sea stars. But now I had a bit more technical expertise. So those spiny bumps, the rough skin that I love so much, those are actually these tiny pincers called pedicelaria. And I'd show them to little summer campers and let the sea stars pull on their arm hairs. If you put them on your arm, they'll tug a little bit. Kids would squeal. They thought it was the coolest thing ever, as did I. But my favorite was the sunflower star. It's this big meter-wide star. It has like 24 arms, and it's beautiful, squishy purple shade. And I still remember its Latin name with this jingle that I picked up from another weathered old local. It goes, Pycnopodia helianthoides, that's the name of the sunflower star. Strongylus introtum, Dodendrobrachiensis, that's the name of the green sea urchin. And I can't really carry a tune, but I will never forget that, I don't think. So most days that summer, I'd set the campers free to roam the intertidal. And then one day, Glenn, who was one of my favorites, this buck-toothed, freckle-faced boy, he had a heavy lisp, and he brought me this mangled pile of sunflower star. And he says, why is it so gooey? It's like this unsettling mauve instead of its usual deep purple, and it was just covered in these white lesions. The fact was that summer was 2016. It was the largest episode of sea star wasting disease to hit that Alaskan coast. And following 2 years of steady warming, it hit with a full force. Basically what it does is suffocate. It covers, it's a bacterial infection, they think, and it suffocates the sea star. Its limbs twist, its body deflates, and its flesh kind of just peels away. It's really kind of a grisly sight. So when Glenn presented me the sea star, I thought back to my time in Acadia, and I wished that I could have told him that they're the cockroaches of the sea. But they just aren't anymore. Populations have declined by 90% in that area since 2016, and last month, I guess 3 months ago now, they were declared critically endangered. When I was a kid who loved tide pooling, I never really expected to witness an extinction before my eyes. At that time, the sea stars evoked this pure enchantment. But now there's something different. They're the earliest casualties of a climate crisis, and kind of a warning is how I see them now. When I was 7, I murdered a sea star, basically is how I see it. And when I was 16, I had to explain to a 7-year-old climate change. That whole summer, I watched the kids play among piles of sea star corpses, and it was like some cosmic retribution, almost. To be honest, I really wouldn't have studied environmental science if it hadn't been for those 2 mushy sea stars. I probably would have been an English major, albeit with some killer skills for oceanography trivia. But watching parts of nature die before my eyes has kind of taken a heavy toll, as staring at those sea stars was one of my earliest joys. And that sense of wonder that I get from the natural world is something I still hold dear today. It's one of the things that really keeps me going. And studying environmental science and climate change is my way of defending it. Making this into my career is my way of remaining cautiously hopeful. And in a way, it's penance to that tangerine star.
Thank you, Anna. Oh, thank you. And you're doing this in the middle of your finals week? Is that what you just said?
It's my last week of undergrad, so I don't have a lot of finals, but I have bunches of projects that we're doing.
Doubly thank you for being here. That was fantastic. And
glad to be here.
Yeah. And yeah, what a, like, you know, especially a special tale this being you wrapping up your undergrad, and probably a big time for reflection for you anyway. And yeah, excited to see what you do in the future. All right, so we have got 7 and an 8, an 8 and a 7, and a 10 and a 10. All right. Thank you, Anna. Yes, I will admit to getting a little misty-eyed during that story. I have similar growing up tales of doing things in tide pools. Though while I never took home a starfish, when I was known for being a toad killer, because I liked them so much that I would put them in my overalls pocket and be friends with them, and then my mother would find them dried up days later in the laundry. So yeah. I have not gone into toad studies, but I have a pet turtle who I confess these things to regularly, so it's okay. All right, let's make some noise for our next storyteller. Audrey. Woo. Woo. Woo.
All right, let me know when you start the timer.
I will start when you just get into like your first, like take a breath. I don't start the timer until you like, and I'm kind and generous in that way.
Thank you.
Sure.
Okay. Well, once upon a time, I was a senior in college as well, and I was 21 years old, and it was the start of the Great Recession, and the Obamas were just coming into office, and supposedly it was the beginning of an era of hope. And I, that year, decided I wanted to save the world, and I was going to do it. So some of you might recognize that symptom of being white and from a family with some intergenerational wealth, like the optimism and narcissism and safety nets all combine in such a way that you just think you can do absolutely anything that you want to do. And I sort of inherited this perspective from my mother, who is a type A communications executive for a national corporation. I don't think she's on today. She was raised in a Jewish family and among academic lawyers who are all fighting for social justice in various ways. And today she enjoys purchasing embarrassingly pure white rugs, and she hangs Black Lives Matter and trans rights flags outside of her lovely suburban home. But anyway, back to my white savior complex in my senior year of college. I was kind of a history and sociology of science geek all through college, like biology and medicine and behavioral healthcare and nutritional sciences. But in my senior year, I stumbled into this history of physics class, and I was really skeptical of it, but quickly became my absolute favorite class of all time, in no small part due to the very dreamy Indian Australian Marxist professor, who I quickly became very close with. And one day in his office hours, I started just going on a rant because I was really pissed off about all the problems in the world, like inequality and healthcare disparity and the broken food system, and how humans just seem to insist upon destroying planet Earth no matter what. And it sort of came to me that school gardens would solve all of these problems, because kids would eat vegetables and they would get healthy, and then they would learn that food comes from the soil, so then they would care about the earth, and then they would bring the food home to their families and tell their families to care about the earth, and we would have resilient local economies and everything would be perfect, and we should just institute these school gardens across the entirety of the US. And so, of course, this professor, who was a Marxist, told me to write a manifesto. And I seriously considered this. I seriously considered that, but I decided to table it. And instead, I joined a federal policy class. And at that time, the federal government had been considering nutrition in schools for many decades. But it really wasn't until Michelle Obama came into the White House that this grant program called Access to Local Foods and School Gardens was first funded in 2009. And pretty much since then, there has been grant funding every year of some variety for these farm to school programs, and they have popped up all over the country. And I became completely obsessed with institutionalizing my socialist dream in our neoliberal society. And I really wanted the government to pay for it. And that was my mission. But I quickly realized that I had never gardened, and I'd only ever cooked a tuna melt, and that federal lobbyists are really boring. So then I decided to work directly with kids and community. And I did what every single person with an idea in Tompkins County does. And I decided to start a nonprofit program. And I begged for money, and I found a videographer, and I found a bunch of dudes with trucks, and I convinced Cooperative Extension to house it. And thus was born my first intervention program with kids. It was called Play With Your Food in the summer of 2009. And it was a weekly program with 12 middle schoolers from GIAC who were in the preteen green camp program. And on the first day of this program, they sauntered into the garden, but they actually did not do that. They lingered outside of the garden and made all these disgusted, dismayed faces, and were like, what the fuck, where am I? Why am I in this place? And then the adults forced them to saunter into the garden. And we quickly began harvesting and looking at what was out in early July in the garden. And they noticed bugs. And of course, someone starts making disgusted gagging noises and pretending to puke because they saw bugs. So it started off well, but by the end of the day, we were all drinking mint lemonade, and we were eating these very colorful shish kebabs and salads, and the kids had made all of it on their own outside in the garden. And by the end of 6 weeks, they were complete champions. They were in an Iron Chef battle in these two teams, Bazel versus Delicioso, and they were comparing the health and environmental impacts of their food choices with cost and convenience, and harvesting and shopping for and cooking and serving all of these meals to our celebrity guest judges up at Eco Village. And the baba ganoush was amazing. And suffice it to say that I was more convinced than ever of my socialist dreams. So for the next 10 years, I spent them farming and building school gardens and farm to school programs. But when I started working with this amazing community of justice warriors, I really began to realize that there was a lot I had to learn about working toward equity and justice in the food system. I really thought that I had all the answers, and that I could make a difference by working with disadvantaged populations. But this Play With Your Food summer program was the first time I had ever worked closely with people of color. Years later, I was in an undoing oppression training, and this memory from my childhood resurfaced of driving with my mom every time we drove across from our white suburb where everybody was inside their houses all the time, across township line to North Philadelphia, where you would see people of color out on the street with each other. There would be this noise because the power locks would come on, power lock the doors every time we drove across township line and ended up there. So even though at home I was hearing all about equality and Martin Luther King and how the exodus from Egypt and freedom and justice and equality, there were all these unspoken messages about who I was supposed to fear, even though, and they were loud and clear, even though they were not spoken. So it's really not been easy for a very loud and cocky lady like myself to learn to recognize my privilege and step back and make space. I've been very defensive over the years, and I really still like to get my way and be in charge. And I've made 1,000 mistakes and tried to learn some humility. Often I really am wondering whether or not I'm making the right kind of a difference. But I just keep looking to all the fierce mentors that I have around me in this amazing community, and the people who are really doing the real work. And in my work, I try to use the power that I do have to advocate for the voices and the power of people who have just faced daily oppression in the food system and in every system. And I try to listen a lot more. And I think maybe if we all did that a little more, we could really make some real change. That's it. Thanks.
Thank you, Audrey. And wow. And like another one, like right exactly at 8 minutes.
8 minutes.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I think if we not only feed the world, but really teach people to get their hands dirty, I think we'll make it a better place. Thank you for the work that you do, Audrey.
Thank you for helping me cut down my incredibly long stream of consciousness written piece to something that could be a story.
You are welcome. Yes. I worked with Anna and Danielle, who's one of the judges at Cornell, which was, I forget, the Climate Spark. And so it was, I did a workshop on storytelling and about, teaching people about telling stories about their spark and how they got involved with climate change. And I focused on the storytelling element, and Audrey listened to the podcast. So yeah, so Anna, the podcast that you produced has been not only listened to, but then made a difference in storytelling for this event. So look at that. All right, so what's up?
I was gonna say, I hope you found it useful, Audrey.
I know, very, very useful. Thank you. I love your story.
Yes. All right, judges. We've got an 8 and a 7, an 8 and an 8, and a 9 and a 10. All right, Audrey. All right, let's keep this party going. And so while we only have one storyteller left, I like going with festivities and continuing it. So make some noise for Marissa. All right. Wait. Marissa is a pottery decorator for Mackenzie Childs, and she got her law degree in her spare time. She lives in Union Springs and is the reigning grand champion storyteller for Trampoline.
Yes. And just before I start my story, I wanted to say something really quickly. Anise, I grew up in a very similar religious background, believing that the world is going to end in flames, and all about trumpets. And as you're telling your story, I live across from a high school, and somebody is playing a trumpet really, really, really loud over a loudspeaker. So anyway.
So what you're saying is the world is ending.
The world is about to end, like as soon as we're done telling stories. So I'll have to keep talking.
Okay, so I'm going to the Westie after we're done for a couple cocktails. So if anyone wants to join me for the end of the world downtown, that's where I'll be. So come on over.
Okay, so let me begin then.
It's rapture for all my friends.
Yeah. Many of you might recall back in 2014, there was like a massive influx of people coming up from Central America over the border seeking asylum. They were coming from El Salvador, Honduras, and Guatemala primarily. Mainly, lots of women and children, a lot of unaccompanied children. And at that time, I was in law school. I was doing an online law school program, and I had an interest. I wanted to become a lawyer to work in humanitarian, civil rights, human rights law, and I was working on an internship in immigration law. And so I was aware of this, and I was thinking, this is something that I might want to get involved in once I was finished with law school. So, I finished law school, graduated, took the bar exam twice, finally passed it. And at that time, there was the election of 2016, and I was volunteering with Ithaca Welcomes Refugees, where we were preparing to welcome 50 refugees into the city of Ithaca, and how to support them and the community to come together to welcome them. But then, after the election and 45 was elected, everything started to change. The numbers of refugees allowed in the country were cut immediately, and for the asylum seekers down at the border, they had been kept in these detention centers as they were being processed, because there were so many of them and the government didn't know what to do with them. So they were basically kept in prisons, concentration camps. And there were, as 45 was starting to issue his first executive orders, he was starting to cut immigration judges and asylum officers who were going to be working with these people, talking about the wall at the border. And I was furious. I was just enraged. I was like, I have to do something. And through my work with Ithaca Welcomes Refugees, somebody had told me that there was this program, pro bono program, down at this detention center in Dilley, Texas, South Texas, where attorneys would come in from all over the country and just, work there for a week, do pro bono work for a week, working with women and children, asylum seekers. And, then you can go home. And I thought, well, that would be a great experience. That was something that I could do right away. I was still I hadn't started practicing law yet. I was still looking for a job. I didn't really know what I was going to be doing, but I said, this is something that I can do for a week. No big deal. So I signed up, and I attended their online orientation, and they started telling us all these stories, like preparing us to come down. What the work we'd be doing is helping these women and children prepare for their credible fear interviews, or CFIs, which is like the first step in seeking asylum. You have to talk to an asylum officer, and you have to establish that you have a fear for your life, that you're being persecuted by a government entity or somebody that the government cannot or will not stop, that you are a member of a protected group, either based on race, religion, nationality, political opinion, or what's called a particular social group, which is, I'll talk a little bit more about that later. And then you have to prove that you are being persecuted on account of being in that group, not just harassed on, just some random, violence that everybody can experience no matter where you are in the world. So our job as volunteers would be to listen to these women's and children's stories, help bring out details that they might not think is relevant, that they would need to talk to when they go to talk to the asylum officer. And one of the things that they were preparing us for before we even arrived was for secondary trauma. They're like, you're going to be listening to like dozens of interviews a day of people going through horrors that you have never experienced, that you can't even imagine. And they're like, if you need to take a break, you need to do what you need to do to take care of your health, your emotional health. If you need to take a break, walk out of the building for a while, go for a walk. So I was like, wow, that's kind of, it's really heavy. It's a big deal. So I arrived in Texas, South Texas, in the middle. I flew into San Antonio. I got a hotel, got a rental car, drove way, way far down in the middle of nowhere, Texas. Basically, it's oil fields, fracking, and other oil drilling. So most of the towns in that area are catering to the drillers and that are passing through. And so I got there, met some of my fellow volunteers, drove out to the detention center early in the morning. Our days started like 7 a.m. We worked till like 6 p.m. I was driving out there. I passed this big facility. It's a prison. There's a big sign out front saying it's a men's prison. Big buildings, wire fences, these lights shining down. And I was like, oh, that's a prison. And right after the prison was the detention center. Big buildings, only they were temporary. They're like trailers, big wire fences, lights down front. The only difference between the prison and this detention center was there was no sign out front of the detention center. So anybody driving past, you wouldn't know what it was until you drove in the driveway. And then there was a big sign that said the South Texas Family Residential Center. The only words in that name that are true is South Texas. It's not family because they're only women and children. Their husbands and older sons had been separated and sent to someplace else. And it was not a residential center. It was a concentration camp for asylum seekers. And according to case law, if you come over the border and you're seeking asylum, you're only supposed to be held for 20 days. So we had to, as volunteers, we had to keep track of how long these people had been there, make sure that they were seeing an asylum officer before their 20-day time period was up. And we walked in the first day, and they had warned us in orientation. They're like, you know, all of you are going to have a moment. Some of you are going to have it when you first walk in and first see the women and children coming into the trailer. We had one trailer. We were in one trailer where we could meet all these women and children every day. And some people actually, they did break down as soon as these women walked in, because they told us, you know, you may be the first friendly person that these people have encountered in this country. You're basically the welcoming committee to America, because as they were rounded up at the border and taken to the detention center, you know, they were just interacting with Customs and Border Patrol, who, you know, they're basically police, you know, like not friendly. So my first day there, not all of us were lawyers. There were a few attorneys. There were a few other like law students. So as a lawyer, they threw me in the deep end the first day I was there. They gave me a special case. This was a woman and her 13-year-old son, who they'd already gone through their credible fear interview, and they got a negative. And they'd also had it appealed to an immigration judge, and also a negative. So what they wanted me to do was draft a request for re-interview, which is basically I had to go over all their records and see if there was some impertinent information that was missed in the interview, or talk to the woman and her son and see if there was anything that, like, new information that would change the outcome of the decision. So I met with this woman. I'll call her Maria. And she had been convinced that her son was she came from El Salvador. She was convinced that her son was going to be recruited, had been approached by the gangs down there to be recruited. And he was denying it. And I talked to him and I was asking him, you know, were you ever approached? And he denied it. And my thought was that he was trying to protect somebody. I thought he was trying to protect his mom, but I wasn't able to get any information out of him. So I had to ask one of the male staff members if he would be willing to talk to him. And sure enough, it turns out that the gang had approached him, tried to recruit him, threatened him. So that's why he was begging his mom, you know, please, let's leave. Let's go to America. And so I drafted the document. It took me 3 days, because this was like my first official legal document that wasn't for a grade. It was actually for a judge. And I was so stressed out. At one point, I did actually leave the building, and I was like looking under this giant blue Texas sky, freaking out, panicking, thinking this woman is going to be deported any day now, any second now, because I can't write a damn paper. So I realized, I was like, I know how to do a law exam paper in 1 hour. It's crap, but it's going to get done. So I did it. I banged out this paper, turned it in. And I found out afterwards that the paper was rejected, the request for re-interview was rejected, but lawyers who came the weeks after tried to do it again. They tried to draft more papers. And I was able to have access to her records for a short time after I left. And I found out that she had been transferred to a facility in Pennsylvania, where basically they're not deported, but their case is not put forward, and they're basically they fall through the cracks there. So I don't know whatever happened to her, and I may never know what happened to her. But that experience, it was definitely very, very traumatic for me coming home. So, okay, well, I'm done.
Thank you, Marissa. Thank you so much. All right, judges, what do we got? I can't imagine what it was like to be down there, Marissa. That must have been, like, I will see you again soon, and I want, maybe not out at a club, maybe we'll hang out. Yeah. But I want to hear more about this in a safe place where it's okay to cry. Yeah. All right, we got a 7 and a 6. A 7 and a 7, and a 9 and an 8. Okay. Thank you, Marissa. Okay. So I have been mathing because that's what I do. So we have a 3-way tie based on score, but I'm going to take a moment and do a thing called ordinal ranking. So that way I see who, I can do ordinal ranking based on who the judges picked as their number one and do that based on the scores. Also, judges, I'm going to send you something real quick in your chat. So, so just take a look right there. Now I know the answer based on your score, but you can answer me back. Okay. Okay. All right. And your answers have also confirmed your ordinal ranking. And I would like to announce our 2021 Spring Rights Trampoline Storytelling Champion of Change, Anise. Are you still with us? Yeah, there you are.
Oh yeah, I'm here.
Yeah,
to the end, baby.
Yeah, so this makes how many championships of trampoline you have won over the years now? Oh, 4-time winner.
Well, this isn't a championship though, so
it's a one-off special championship, which came with its own prize and trophy. I will ask you to also will you email me your address so I can get you your prizes?
Yeah.
And
thank you.
You're welcome. And should you decide, you can also join us for the our end of the year. So Trampoline happens on the third Thursday of every month right here online. If you want to what's that?
Second Thursday.
Second Thursday every month, right? Sorry. Flame Night Fever happens on the third Thursday of every month. So, if you are on Facebook, make sure to follow Trampoline. If you are not on Facebook and want to know more, you can sign up for our Trampoline email. If you are on Facebook and would like to get emails about Trampoline, join us second Thursday of every month. However, summer's coming. You're tired of Zoom. I'm tired of Zoom. I'm going to be on vacation on the second Thursday of June and July. I want every human here to be outside sipping rosé at 7 p.m. on the second Thursday of the month of July. So we are not going to have a trampoline for June or July. We are taking some time off because my goal between now and August is to have an actual physical location where we can have this again. Our home, the origin of Trampoline is Lot 10. We are contractually obligated in some world to return to Lot 10 should they return to being open. Is that going to happen? I don't know. I also sent a note to the woman who's doing the booking at South Hill Cider that, wouldn't it be nice, at least for the month of August, to have an outdoor event of storytelling up on the hill there in August when they have all of the sunflowers growing. So we will be returning on the second Thursday of August. Stay in touch either on Facebook or fill out the form to sign up for the emails. And I'll let you know when that is going to happen because my goal, wherever it is, August is going to happen in person. Unless, of course, the fifth wave of the pandemic comes and we are all locked down again. But fingers crossed that doesn't happen. So please stay in touch. Please continue to come to Spring Rights in the realm of shameless self-promotion, especially if you're feeling a little vaxxy these days, come join me in real life, in person, where I get to be on a stage holding a microphone under lights in front of actual human beings at the dock on Saturday, May 29th, hosting Whiskey Tango Sideshow's triumphant return back to the stage. So if you're into the whole burlesque thing, come join us. It'll be fun.
When is that happening?
Saturday, May 29th. So I'll be like, Whiskey Tango Sideshow. Yeah, I've been to the dock now since I've been vaccinated, and they've started having shows again, and they do a good job of trying to keep it safe. Also, they've got 4 open doors. It feels good, and you know, by the end of May, I think the majority of this county is going to be vaccinated anyway. So May 29th the show will start at 9 p.m. but get there early because there is limited capacity still, so they might change that by then. And please continue to come to Spring Rice events. Also, please, if you haven't already, follow Story House Ithaca on Facebook and other means, because they are bringing more storytelling to the community in many different ways. They will be a part of Sunday's Spring Rights. What time on Sunday, John?
6:30.
6:30. I should know that because I'll be running your tech, but that's like 3 days from now. And we meet tomorrow at 11 a.m. to talk about what we're doing.
Do not forget. Yeah.
Yeah. So lots more storytelling coming to the community. Also, if you like the drag and burlesque scene, next Thursday we have Flame Night Fever on Twitch, and if you've been watching this year, it's the Flamies celebrating 1 year of we've got the very beautiful Tilia Cordata, who's disguising herself as Andrew Sheldorf up there, is one of the hosts, organizers. Thank you so much for making Flame Night Fever happen, which is bringing together communities and performers, and we've all gotten really good at making videos this year. And so the Flamies are happening next Thursday via Twitch, which is a free application which you can watch on your TV, your computer, your phone, whatever. Yeah, and just look it up. I'd like to thank our judges tonight, John, Danielle, Bobathan, and our storytellers, Anise, Anna, Audrey, Brian, Marissa, and as always, my right-hand man, Peter, for just keeping me together. Tune in to Peter on Sunday at 3 p.m. for Burning Airlines on WRFI. It is the coolest radio show in the area, and I'm not just biased because I like Peter. It is actually the coolest radio show.
It'll actually be live this week. I'm going to be in the studio.
Sweet. I'm very excited. I will be listening. And anyone who's local in the area, I really am going to the Westie now to have drinks, which is apparently going to be part of the Rapture. So if you're downtown and feel like having a cocktail, come join me. And thank you all so much for joining us.
Thank you.